your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecci.
Welcome to Dave
and Mecci's
Shiny Side Out on WZZR, coming to you from Australia for Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. It's home to fresh, unfiltered ideas and conversations. You'll find those in the chat room and also on air, and a place to get your merch. This is show number 491.
190 and 400.
Yes, it's the 500th is looming. Catch us on air, online, and anywhere on your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. If you miss Solaris's show, like I did, you can get it from the archives, like I'm going to. And it was a great show, though. She had Jeff Woolwine, and they were talking about his book, Petroglyphs in the Sky.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I caught the end. It was very, very good. But you know what? If you wonder how that you can support this awesome platform, this is listener supported, you can like donate via Patreon. You can buy some merch from the station. You can subscribe to the archives. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do. You can just gift money to them. That's kind of Patreonish. But if you want to buy something, you can. And you could buy yourself, if you're in the US, you can buy a knife or a seed pack. If you're outside of that in the world, maybe an MP3 USB with survival documents on it. It's an EMP-proof one as well. Probably, you know what? If you buy one of those metal trash cans from Home Depot or here in Australia in Bunnings, it's a very similar kind of store. Now there's a little more hardware than furniture and stuff as well. You just put all your sensitive IT things into there, digital stuff. So if an EMP does happen, it's a metal trash can with a metal lid. That's enough Faraday cage for anybody.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah, it is. However, good luck if you wanted to then power it on after you've extracted it from the box, because the likely scenario is that there won't be any more 240 volts out of the wall socket. So make sure you also pack in there maybe a solar panel, an inverter, and get yourself some batteries, storage, and have that all inside trash cans, right? So you can pull them out and start using them. But you'll be the only one with a cell phone that's working that won't be able to connect to the network. So, consider what you can and can't do. Maybe a shortwave radio, but remember they collected all those wavelengths back. They vacuumed that back up into the government, Mecci, a long while back. But look, before I go too far astray from the show notes, I'd like to say that Mecci and I, you can probably tell from the accents, Mecci's accent is a bit more international.
International.
International it is. No, that's the wrong voice. Okay, so we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. When I live, it's the 𝐫𝐞𝐯𝐶𝐶. Sometimes it's the Bungalung up in Ballina. But Mecci, who are the traditional owners in your area?
It's the Iraq people. The Iraq people up here in Pemberway.
Yeah. And as a result, and the honor and respect that we have for them, we pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. Boy, how things happen, how life changes, how this world is going day to day. Remember how we had an 8.2 or something near Alaska, then there was an 8.2 near Malaysia. Then it was a 7.2 down the bottom of South America, and then there was another 7.2, and they're almost what's it called when it's on the opposite side? Don't say opposite side of a circle. So there's a cross in a plane, and two of the 8.2s are completely opposite, and two of the 7.4s are
They
on
are
either sides as well.
Diametrically opposed.
That's it, diametrically opposed. Yeah, so they actually form a cross, and they're almost completely, very, very close to.
X marks the spot.
Yeah, and with when the first 8 point something came, it's like, wow, it's been 10 years since we've seen one of those. Then there's another one. And every week now there's been something of 7 and higher. And to be honest, I follow Dutch Since, and if you don't, you should, on YouTube. He keeps getting taken down every once in a while. Someone has some injunction against him saying that he's causing panic and alarm. And you go back in history and you see he was pretty close, within 100 Ks, and intensity. He matches the intensity of what's coming, and his predictions are quite good. Everyone in the industry tell him or advertise that he's an idiot and he doesn't know anything he's talking about. However, the evidence is there, and I'm not saying the kind of evidence that you would find where someone sends 1,000 people a letter saying this stock is going to go up, and then the next week he says to half of those people who the stock went down, he goes, this stock is going to go, he splits it in two again and says half of them are going to go up, half going to go down, until he ends up with only a few people who had seen a succession of his forecast to be correct. And then he extracts money from them as a scam. That isn't what he does. I think is pretty close. Maybe the way he describes it isn't quite what's going on, but I give him that. And wow, Mecci, I'm just going to say, earthquakes are off the charts right now.
Yeah, look,
but that's not the only thing, is it?
No, well, look, this is really where we spent a little bit of time here, and again, I need to let's take a step back. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, and a lot of it doesn't make the front page anymore. It's just being pushed away by this whole SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, whatever you're going to call it, kind of thing, right? So in fact, that was this thing. The question was recently asked, what was in the news before there was this pandemic? Is a good question. But ultimately, everything is being pushed aside. What we are seeing, though, are some really bad weather events, or weather-driven events, and they're actually two very separate things. I mean, right now we have extreme heat and the attendant catastrophic fires in areas of the world which just haven't seen this before, and then you've got extreme flooding events again in areas of the world where you haven't seen them before either, not to that extent. And I know this, certainly the one in Germany. That's actually my neck of the woods where I grew up. We have never seen floods like that, and like the entire village was almost swept away there. So we're seeing phenomenal flooding here, right? And I've got some stats here, obviously, like I always do, but there's some really I guess scary kind of numbers and places, where this doesn't seem to have happened before. But the floods, as you might recall, European floods, let's call them, if you will, right? Just a couple of months ago, and they received 2 months worth of rainfall in 2 days, July 14 and 15. So not even 2 months, a month ago, really, right? And the soils that this rain fell on was already near saturation, and the top 1 meter of soil was completely saturated as well. And
wow,
and the affected,
couldn't take any more. Yeah,
that just couldn't go anywhere, right? And the most affected regions were Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Germany. So that's the Benelux countries and Germany. Okay. They also had a good 100 people were killed. I mean, it was catastrophic. It's just we have never seen this in Germany. It just didn't happen.
But the floods. I'm just going to expand this a bit, right? So the floods are in Turkey, Germany, China, Bangladesh, usually India, but also London, Belgium, Colombia, and Italy.
Yeah, but there's more. There's
more. Go ahead.
So Luxembourg, Netherlands, Switzerland, parts of northeastern France were also badly impacted, right? In Switzerland, Meteo Swiss described high water levels as critical, for example, right? Flash flooding also paralyzed London's transport network, which we didn't hear much about, on July 12th, as around 70 millimeters of rainfall fell in a short space of time. So I didn't hear much of the flooding in London, to be honest with you.
There's just not enough space in the news cycle.
No, that's right. Now but so while Central Europe and Western Europe had these deadly floods, if you will, now that Northern Europe was gripped by an extended heat wave. Finland had its warmest June on record. Okay, and the heat has extended well into July. In Kouvola-Anjala, which is in southern Finland, it's a city, has seen 27 consecutive days with temperatures above 25 degrees. That's the longest heat wave in Finland since at least 1961. Right, and the other places like Lappeenranta, Hiekkapaikka, Porvoo, Kalbat, Grund, which have seen similar heat waves as well. And the Gulf of Finland and the Baltic Sea is also at a record warm. It's up to 26.6 degrees Celsius on July 14th, the warmest since the records began 20 years ago.
Do you know what, Mickey? Wait. It's just the canary in the mine for temperatures has been Australia.
Oh yeah, look,
right, and no one cared.
No
one in the world cared. That doesn't matter. It's not our country. Good luck with that.
It's always hot in Australia.
Right.
But so that's Europe, okay? But
the
Western US and Canada have also been gripped by heat, as you might recall. Many records broken in the most recent heat wave, which again was in July. In southwestern US, Las Vegas tied its all-time record of 117 degrees Fahrenheit or 47.2 degrees Celsius. Same in Utah. Death Valley, California had reported temperatures of 130 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 54.4 degrees Celsius on July 9, right?
That's only 1 degree away from the hottest possible temperature.
Yeah, well, and right now they're currently evaluating the meteorologists the 130 degree Fahrenheit reading on August 2020 at Death Valley, which holds world's highest temperature record. Death Valley does, right? And the mega drought conditions, very dry fuels and heat waves are fueling in the occurrence of extreme wildfires this year in the Western USA, as well as Western and Central Canada. You might remember this. There's some catastrophic fires that took place in the Pacific Northwest. Hopefully you remember it. Okay, so but that's not. I mean, that's North America, right? Canada, United States. They've reached prepared level of level 5, preparedness level 5. Some international resources were deployed to keep those blazes under control. On August 8th, not too long ago, the National Interagency Fire Center situation report listed a total of 39,267 wildfires in the U.S. and they have burned more than 3.54 million acres. A total of 23,930 personnel, that's approximately the population of Paradise, California, are deployed on 110 active fire sites. In Canada, they reported 5,619 fires that burned more than 9.1 million acres, okay? And 255 as of August 7th, which is now a week ago, there were 255 out-of-control fires. But then you got blazes in Bulgaria, Albania, in Greece. You might have seen islands burned to a crisp.
Completely, right? That's awful.
Turkey had both flooding and fires.
That's right.
You also had but these are horrific fires. Then you had fires in Russia we haven't heard much about, right? And the affected acreage is 3 million acres. Yep. Okay, and they had more than 11,000 fires burning. Okay, so the rain, which in Turkey, which I just mentioned, came as a godsend to extinguish the fires, but led to catastrophic flooding. Okay, Greece, I've just mentioned Italy. I mean, again, Italy since June 15th has seen 44,000 fires compared to 26,000 this time last year. So there's an increase of 18,000 fires, almost double the amount of fire. Almost, not quite, right? Lebanon, catastrophic fires, like they haven't got enough to worry about, And coupled with that comes the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season. Okay, currently they're monitoring 3 low pressure systems that have to become, potentially become these massive hurricanes. And the West-North America drought is also a thing. I don't know if you've seen this, but certainly in California. But not just California, the water reserves are down to fractions of percent now. They're really, really low water levels. Okay, it is not not good. You also had fires in Tunisia, Northern Africa, catastrophic fires, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go on.
What happened to that beautiful, lovely, stable climate that we used to have?
Well, let's be clear though, right? It was an anomaly. The weather we've all been experiencing over the past few decades, most of our lives, I should think, and in fact, our parents' lives, maybe even our grandparents' lives, that weather bubble, climate bubble, you can call it what you want, is an anomaly. I mean, the world has always been in an upheaval when it comes to climate. Climate is changing constantly. It just does. It's just, nature of the beast. If it's accelerating now or not, it's neither here nor there. What we do know, though, for a fact, because we've done the digging, is that the climate can change overnight. Why would you say that, Mecci? Because, and I've said this before, we have found frozen mammoths in the permafrost, the tundra of Siberia. Like, they're completely preserved in the frozen mud, if you will. We dig them up, and the mammoth meat was even given to dogs to eat. And they ate it. So it was quite well preserved. But what they found in the mouth as well as in the stomach of these, hairy elephants were buttercups.
That's right.
Now, buttercups are fairly delicate flowers. They don't really grow in permafrost or in anything but temperate climates, really. So we know for a fact that at some point in the past, that area of the world, which is now permafrost, was a temperate climate, which allowed buttercups to grow. What we also know is that these mammoths died so rapidly, and there's many of them, not just mammoths, but saber-toothed tigers and other animals as well, massive boneyards in Siberia. They died rapidly as though something had struck them down immediately, and they were frozen in place. I mean, almost snap frozen.
Snap frozen, yeah, that's the word I was going to use.
And this is the reality of it. So now we're talking about, the 1.5 degree warming. We're talking about, over the next century and all these wonderful things. So forget about human interference or human, culpability in the current climate that we're seeing. So again, so step back. Climate is what we see over long periods of time. The weather is what happens to you every day.
That's right.
Okay, but what we see is, if you see an accumulation of weather becoming more and more extreme in temperature, in duration, in precipitation, so if it's either really low temperatures, really high temperatures, a lot of rain or snow, etc., etc.
I would call those extremes. So extremes from the norm.
Correct, but the problem is these extremes are becoming more and more frequent, where to the point now, I would say, that where these extremes are on the verge of becoming the new norm. Now, if that happens, that's when you have climate change, because climate is mild. We enjoy our weather, and it happens every day, and it's not too bad. But if the weather events are bad all the time, everywhere, so I'm not talking about a little weather event over here, over there, or catastrophic event here, over there. Like Hurricane Catherine, for example, that was a severe thing, but it was in a year of relative calm. The problem arises when it happens in many parts of the world over an extended period of time, over many years. So not just the one place where it happens all the time, a couple of places or 3 or 4 places, but many places. Like, if you look at the map of this thing, right? These temperatures and rainfalls, etc., and they're all coupled, of course, because the hotter it is, the more water evaporates. And the more water evaporates, the more it condenses up in this, in the atmosphere and into clouds, and therefore it triggers more rain.
That's right.
And which then, of course, can lead to catastrophic flooding, depending on where it is. I mean, the event in China, the really bad one recently, I think a couple of weeks ago. Now, does it flood in China? Yes, it does, absolutely, all the time. But it hadn't flooded in that, I think, Hunan province for 1,000 years, not like that, right? And that's really the problem.
So they had more than a month's rain overnight.
Yeah, boom. And in India, India, Bangladesh, we all, used to landslides and flooding, of course, like the monsoon season. So if you're in a tropical, subtropical, or, some kind of microclimate where we're used to it, it's what happens. I mean, sure enough, it is when it happens in areas of the world.
It's like the Nile Delta.
Yeah, but
right?
when we haven't seen it, but we haven't seen it in these areas of the world. So the reason I'm harping on about this is this: be prepared. Dave and I took on this radio show with a number of different agendas in mind for ourselves. So we wanted to have a platform, and Nighthawk was good enough to give us one to voice certain opinions, certain research that we had undertaken over the years. You know, and completely, you know, obviously, you know, we're not going to be paid for it, so it's a free service, hopefully entertaining as well as informative. But apart from that, Dave and I always believed in being prepared. Nothing to do with Boy Scouts. It's just how you should live your life. You should be prepared. And I give you a very simple example. Right now, you know, no matter what else is true or real, people are locked in their apartment buildings, and in some instances they can't even get groceries in there. In Australia right now, here in Australia. So you have what you have. So in your apartment building, in your flat, whatever it is, whatever is there, that's what you have, and good luck to you. Now, water is still running, sure enough, and electricity and all that, you know, that's all still going. But if you haven't, you know, laying at least, you know, some provisions for yourselves for a couple of weeks, you're gonna run out of food real quick. So this is the age of preparedness. This is the age where you have to be prepared. Now, look, if you think the virus is a big hoax and you don't think it's real, that's fair enough. But the government has got the power to force you into your home, right? And I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but I can see it happening at gunpoint at some point in the future if people don't comply. My opinion only. Okay, but in Australia they have now deployed the military to help the police in Sydney, and several hundred military. In fact, maybe even a couple thousand. I don't know.
I've got a story on that.
Okay, cool. We'll get to it in a second.
Yeah.
So this is happening in Australia, where we have. I mean, look, it is deployed to ensure that people don't congregate in groups larger than they're allowed, etc., etc. And right now it's just issuing fines. Really, that's where we are. I mean, it's $5,000 and $3,000 a pop. It's not cheap, but it's not. No one is shooting at you. No one is putting you in jail. However, we have seen in China where people were welded into their apartment buildings. Okay, and if this, if again, it doesn't matter if you believe this virus is real or not. It's completely irrelevant. The consequences are that you are going to be effectively put under house arrest. Okay, and here we've been locked up since the beginning of June, more or less. I mean, sure, I can go out, but I can't visit my mum. I haven't seen my mum in 2.5 months, right? We got Zoom and all that, sure enough, all good, yeah. And she's 20 kilometers away from me in North Sydney, right? That's where she lives. I'm out west in one of the LGAs. That was one of the first ones that was locked down really hard. But so preparedness is what it's about. And be it the virus or be it the natural disaster, and we've seen this in Australia as well, massive fires. I don't know if you remember this. In 2019, we had the worst bushfire season I think ever.
2019, yeah, that's right. With
2 billion animals.
2 billion animals dead.
That's, I mean, what?
Native Australian animals, and some may not recover. Yeah,
that's almost unthinkable. I mean, fire has always been part of the Australian ecology. We know this because a lot of the plants in Australia need fire to propagate. Right? So bushfires, they transport the seed material of certain trees and shrubs, etc. And they can then germinate.
Some germinate because of that. Yeah.
Correct. So it is part of the Australian ecological makeup. Not fires like this, though, right? Where it completely obliterates everything in its path.
In fact, it burnt the trees underground as well.
Yeah.
And the heat was like an oven, and if you walked along the ground, you could fall into a furnace beneath the ground and become incinerated.
And some of these fires, they were smoldering for weeks and weeks after, in logs or even underground. In the root system. In the root system. Now,
that's never happened.
No. As I look at the news across the world, from places as diverse as, like I said, Turkey, North America, Australia, Tunisia, Northern Africa, the Greek islands, etc., etc. What you see is the smoldering earth. You see blackened trees, you see burned out and molten cars to some extent. You hear about people that couldn't get away in time.
I saw a gorge weir, and all the cars completely burned in there. People had nowhere to go, man. It was. It's so sad to see that people think that you can drive through it, but you can't.
No, you can't. I mean, your car will melt from under you.
So, Mecci, if I was Nostradamus and I was looking forward in time, the imagery that I would get in my mind would be that Earth was hell. The imagery that you see when there's just, it's dark and the ground is completely on fire everywhere.
Mm.
It's that image that if I was back then looking to now, I would say, wow, it's like hell on earth.
Well, in many ways, it really is.
Yeah.
And no pun intended. But so you have these images of these fires at the same time as you have these images of these massive flooding events. It doesn't matter if it's in China or in Europe or in India or wherever the flooding is occurring, Turkey, etc., etc. It's the same images of cars washed up into piles. So the cars
piled
up. Yeah, there's this massive amounts of earth that is just washed away. You see houses that have collapsed and been swept away. You see massive landslides, mudslides, etc., etc. And in very diverse areas of the world. So this is not one place this is happening. It's happening everywhere, and I'm just terrified now to think what might happen in Australia in the coming summer. But look,
it's going to be really bad.
Well, yeah, hopefully not. But look,
I'll tell you because I've walked around my property because you can't go anywhere, and the ground is completely dry. All the like the leaf litter and everything that's there. All the trees are stunted in this last few months. But they drop their leaves all the time. It's not just not deciduous, right? So they round the clock they're dropping leaves, and it's just building up, and there's a lot of fire, collateral there to burn, and it's going to be really bad. I'm just putting that out there. All the rains that we've had there's nothing there now. We've not had any significant rain to wet anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and the problem, of course, is that you got this dry tinder material, right? Which will easily. Lightning storm. That's all it takes. You've got some crazy people that start these fires, but it's Mother Nature will take care of it.
Dry lightning, so lightning that stretches out from a storm cloud where it hasn't rained on anything, and the lightning hits the ground and can start the fire. Yeah, that's what happened last time.
Yeah, completely. And again, of course, some fire starters out there as well. So we have these massive, and these are massive. These are continental in scale. These events. They're not isolated little hamlets here, a village there. What happened in the Pacific Northwest was continental. It was across Canada and the northwestern United States. What happened in Europe, is happening in Europe, is across Europe, Central and Western Europe, and Southern Europe as well. Don't forget that, as well as Northern Africa, as well as into the
start to group these together into look what's going on across the globe. Yeah, it's a global thing.
Yeah, Asia is seeing it, and as we're seeing more and more moisture in the atmosphere, right? The intensity of the storm system is going to increase. We already had a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I think, we already had to give this superstorm that happened in the Atlantic a new name because we ran out of names to describe it.
It exceeded all those that came before it. Also, Mecci, if you haven't noticed, there's been tornadoes in China.
Yeah, I know.
Actual tornadoes. Yeah.
But see, the thing is, all of these things, which still make the news, they still make the news. Don't get me wrong, right? I watch SBS News, I watch RT, I watch various other news sources. I watch Deutsche Welle because I can. I watch Turkish news. Look, I watch and I consume, I should say, a lot of news, a lot of information, independent little bloggers as well, etc., etc. Yeah. It's just interesting. So I get a good view across the board. So I'm not a CNN or BBC kind of guy, right? I look at those as well. Don't get me wrong, absolutely, just to see what the narrative is.
Yeah, that's what I do too.
But ultimately, these are now continental crisis points. Does it happen everywhere? No, it doesn't happen everywhere, but it happens over vast tracts, and it might not happen, in the same area in consecutive years, but it might move, a couple 100 kilometers or to another country. But these events will happen more and more. Now, what we're doing right now is modeling, and we've been doing this for a long time. And a model is only as good as the data you put in, and only as good as the processing power that you have, because these are all computerized models. The problem, of course, that we're having is that our computers aren't powerful enough, and we don't have all the data to get accurate models. So what they're saying now is, 1.5 degrees, and we're going to be in big trouble, but it's not going to happen. Another thing, oh no, it is going to happen. It's going to happen a lot sooner than we thought. I'll give you. So okay, this is really interesting, right? There's an IPCC special report on global warming of 1.5 degrees centigrade. It mentions that
that.
Yeah, I know, right? But look, disregard. I don't think it's human-induced, but it doesn't really matter, right? Now, the global warming has already caused multiple observed changes in the climate system. Trends in intensity and frequency of some climate and weather extremes have been detected over time spans during which about 0.5 of a degree of global warming occurred. Changes include increases in both land and ocean temperatures, as well as more frequent heat waves in most land regions. Further, there is substantial evidence that global warming has led to an increase in the frequency, intensity, and/or amount of heavy precipitation events at the global scale, which we're seeing now. Now they're saying this 1.5 degrees, that's the magic number after which we're going to be screwed. Now, actually, I think we are past that point. So this is no longer about stopping climate change. This is now about being prepared and living with it. And I think it's going to happen a lot faster, everybody, than they all predicted. Okay, this is not going to go away and maybe affect our children's children. It'll affect us because, again, they can't account for all the factors in the models. And Dave and I have said this from the start 10 years ago, longer now. This modeling is wrong. It'll happen a lot faster. Once the dominoes are falling, they will fall really, really quickly. Remember, I told everybody many times now that when things go sideways really badly, things go south, it'll happen like, you hear that? Like that. I just snapped my fingers. It'll happen like that. Be it a human-induced thing like war, or revolution, or weather, or even a meteorite impact. These things, there's no warning. I mean, there's I guess some warning that we're seeing, extreme weather, etc., etc. There will be a point when it'll just boom, it'll flick a switch, and that's our new life. That's where we live, and we have to get used to it. It's just the nature of the beast.
There was already in that report there was millions who have already had to move because of climate change.
Yeah.
So it's inevitable. I don't think we can sustain these floods and fires to the point where we're staying put. I don't think we can weather the storm, so to speak.
Yeah, SJ is just to put some. Yeah. Sorry, SJ, I just saw this, my friend. He put something very interesting into the. He tried to call us. I don't even know if we've got a call.
He did. He tried to call me, but I can't. I couldn't add him directly to the call, so it's all right. Sorry, SJ.
Sorry, SJ. But what he says is water is creating a global weight imbalance. A global modeling of land, water, and energy balances. He pasted some links to websites. A healthy balance among observation, theory, and modeling is the key to development, with more weight given to seasons of high water, possible influence climate change and water balance. Like, I've always thought that as well, because the weight is shifting. If you right now, a lot of water weight is concentrated on the poles. It just is, because that's where the ice is. That's where the ice is, right? The water ice. And if that melts, then that weight shifts. It has to shift. It must. It can't. It cannot. But I mean, it just does. And it might. It might worsen the wobble. Right? I mean, who knows what's going to happen? We don't know. It's like, when you've got a bucket of water, you've got things slushing around in it, you can actually feel the inertia, right? When you're moving it around.
Yeah, completely.
The Earth is the same.
There's a bulge of tidal bulge, and there's oscillations within every basin. So the Pacific is considered a single basin for that. And then the Atlantic and the Indian Oceans have their own tidal oscillation basin.
Yes.
And look, because the water, if there was an unbroken waterway right around the equator, if it was unbroken all the way around, we would see that the Earth would be on some crazy latitude of wobble. But we don't, and it's broken up, and it kind of splashes backwards and forth. And you'll notice that in any of your areas where that basin has a double oscillation. In Australia, we have two tidal heights that are maintained. There's a high tide and which is a very high tide and a high tide. And those are part of that oscillation. On the east coast of South America, they have another oscillation which actually devoided them of an entire tide once.
Mm-hmm.
In an inlet, there was a whole like a bay that's tidal, and all the water got sucked out of the bay because of this very like an anomaly in their oscillation. Crazy. However, there is an actual increase in the Earth's speed. A slowing down of the Earth. That's right, slowing down of the Earth in the last 3 weeks by almost half a second.
So are you talking about rotational speed?
Yeah, rotational speed. So there's been a slowing down of that. Now, when you think about something getting broader, its spin rate slows down like an ice skater.
It's like when you hold your arms in or out. That's exactly right, Dave. Imagine yourself spinning around really fast.
Yep.
If you bring your arms in, you spin faster. If you pull your arms out, you slow down. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So if there was a greater bulge, we'd spin slower, and that's consistent to the half second that they reckon. I'm not saying that's what experts are saying. That's my opinion. I agree that it's definitely a thing going on.
It makes perfect sense, absolutely. And not only that, go on.
No, I wanted to shift the topic.
Okay, where do you want to shift it to, my friend?
Well, I just have a couple of pages of news to talk about with the virus. And Mecci's touched on this a couple of times already, to do with what does it look like now for us in Australia, certainly in New South Wales, because we've got the whole state locked down now.
Correct.
Not just little tiny LGAs here and there. That's local government areas. So the daily numbers are still climbing, and on average it's like 100 per week increase. So the daily rates are increasing on average over the last 7 weeks, and they're up at the mid 400s now per day, and it's still going up. And now it's spreading, not just on the east coast of the country, also of the state, but going inland a couple 1,000 kilometers. And we're seeing, like, we had a call with one of our friends that owns a pub in near Mudgee. And Mudgee's now got that orange Bathurst. Everyone's got the virus in their towns. It's spread everywhere, probably via transport, like of goods and truck drivers, unwittingly, of course. No blame. And it's just going everywhere. And it's really leading us down a terrible path, because our goal, from the government's perspective, our state government, is after elimination, right? And so this is what's happening to us is we've had a bunch of rule changes from last Friday to yesterday. So we're 10 kilometres limited distance from home, out if you had to cross an LGA boundary. Now it's 5 kilometres, and there's no travel outside of your LGA without a government permit.
So LGA means local government area. Think of it as a county or some such.
County. County is probably the easiest way to put it, right? So Orange County was much bigger than Anaheim Hills, right? As a suburb name. But anyway, kind of works. So now there's no travel to other singles houses outside of 5 kilometres. Plus, both people must be registered as the other's single with the government. I think it's a pattern here, right? So there's now right now on Friday, there was 300 Australian Defence Force personnel, and now they've increased that by 500 up to 800. Now, this is Defence Force. That's military are going to be on the streets in my state. So,
again, not National Guard for American listeners.
No, not National Guard. It's the actual army.
This is the actual military. Because we don't really have a National Guard in Australia.
No, because, look, and remember what the National Guard was designed to do, and it was to be an internal force, actionable, that scooted around the law of comitatus.
Posse comitatus.
That's it, posse comitatus, yeah. So that's what it was designed to be, around, scooting around the law, right? Okay, so now you're only authorized... Sorry. What?
No, I was going to say, correct.
Correct. Yeah. Okay, so there's only authorized travel now being permitted by a government-issued permit. There's a theme, isn't it, Mecci? Okay, so one person per day can leave the house for essential goods, medical or registered or permitted reason. That's government permitted reason. There's also QR codes to check in at every place that you're shopping or visiting. And there's also a limit of 2 persons that can exercise together within 5 kilometers of their residences. Yeah, masks are mandatory outside. They're not mandatory in cars unless you are traveling in a vehicle with a person who is not part of your household. But having said that, that would have to be an Uber driver or a taxi driver or a bus driver or someone like that. You're not allowed to travel in a car with someone who you don't live with. Because now police, this is a news story, Megan, it's really cool. The police, the head of the police of our state said, "Oh my, these are the largest fines we've ever had to administer."
Yeah.
Right? He was like, "Wow, I'm really surprised at the size of these fines." Because, you know, you could be drink driving and intentionally careen your car into a group of people on the side of the road and get a lesser fine. You would still go to jail for, you know, a lot of other things, but as a fine, no. And for such a minimal, apparently minimal offense. I'm not saying that it's good, not at all. The virus is real. So it's $3,000 now for a breach of distance. You just travel too far. Their police cars have automatic little sensors that read all the license plates around the vehicle and sound an alarm if the person is outside of this distance. Wow, that's something, right? It's $2,000 for no mask. It's also $2,000 for a breach of a travel reason. There was a police helicopter, Mecci, flying around low over the Central Coast where I live, looking for breaches. Now, if you think that that's in the suburbs, but during the day, we've had some of the best weather ever. To be honest with you, from an Australian point of view, the cloudless skies, beautiful in the sun, not too hot. And for those people at Bondi or any other beaches, that now helicopters are dispersing people. You know, please disperse. This is your premier. Please disperse. And they've got, I've actually got a photo, Mecci, that they've got police on horseback on the beaches. You know, because traipsing along on the sand is actually tough going.
It's quite. I don't know if you've seen a horse like in this. It's quite intimidating, to be honest with you.
They're huge. They're huge creatures, right? And but it kind of makes us look like a little country, little country town. We kind of are, right? We've grown up from a country town, but we still hold on to some really cool things. And I think the mounted police are actually pretty good. I've spoken to a few of them, and you know they're so super proud. They get to train and they work with the horses, and you know what? If we didn't race horses and no one ate them and they didn't use them in police, they would have become extinct a long time ago, right?
That's probably true.
Yeah, it's like cows. The only reason they're around is because we eat them.
No, they can be mutilated by the.
By the aliens. That's right. The only reason we have them is for alien mutilation. That's it. So, look, kind of just a thought, right? Our state was broke. We had no money. We had to sell all the power assets and everything just to pay off some debt. Like, honestly, we have no money. But I reckon there's a way out. The gold toilets might go, this is from my friend, who's actually not in the chat room today. The gold toilets can go back onto the shopping list because there's still a few rules because of all of these fines, you see. And I made a joke that if the policeman comes out and he pulls out an old paper napkin and wipes the tears from his eyes and says, sadly the numbers are falling, right? It means that they're not making all this money because apparently they made a lot of money in fines over this weekend so far, and it's actually like a cash cow. They're getting to milk the cash cow. Woo!
So just to be very clear, right? Someone with these catastrophes, and again, most of these catastrophes are not accidental. I want to say here, they're not accidental, right? there's something's driving both the natural as well as the man-made, obviously man-made, like the pandemic catastrophes. And people are making a lot of money, same as war. So people that are making money are governments, local governments, federal governments, etc., corporations, and of course pharmaceutical companies. The pharmaceutical companies, especially Pfizer and so forth, are going to rake in tens of billions of extra dollars in profit. Profit. Because of what's happening right now. Never mind what the other circumstances are. I mean, millions of people are getting vaccinated every day. Millions, tens of millions maybe, and all of these things cost money. There's a whole cottage industry around this, and which I know very well because some members of my family are part of that cottage industry. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I have no opinion, but I'm saying to you is there's lots of money to be made. If I had my time again, I would invest in biomedical stock, but we are where we are. And the thing is this, we saw it, and this sort of brings me, this is sort of tangential, but 20 years we spent in Afghanistan, ostensibly nation building, even though Joe Biden said we never meant to nation build. And now we've pulled out the country within days. Within days, it went from okay to completely bananas. It's gone, right? Forget Afghanistan. It's a done deal, like Iraq. And the Taliban are taking
two of the three largest cities are now taken over by the Taliban already.
No, the Taliban will have Kabul next week. Kabul will be in Taliban hands next week, and they're now sending troops back. I think the US are sending 3,000 or some thousand troops back to coordinate the evacuation. It's like back in the 70s in Saigon, getting a helicopter off the roof to flee. Now this is bad. This is really, really bad. But somebody made a lot of money over the last 20 years. I mean, people made billions of dollars in the reconstruction, especially of Iraq, but also, in doing things in Afghanistan. Now, Afghanistan didn't have many good targets to bomb, but at least that's what Rumsfeld said.
Halliburton was part of the rebuilding.
Halliburton was front and center, my friend.
That was a no-bid win too on that as well.
There's no competitive bidding. You get the
and they sold the weapons.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Yeah. Oh, they sold the weapons that bombed the country, Iraq that is, into nothingness, and then they brought in the construction firms to build it again. Sweet. Woo! In the process, taking control of gas, oil, etc., and a whole bunch of other things, and it's really the ancient artifacts that people forget about. But you have to understand that when we talk about the Sumerians and Babylonians, that's where they were. It's the whole area around. The two-stream land, ancient Sumeria, the Hindu Kush, right up into Afghanistan. This is, and that's where they also have meant to have found things in caves, giants as well as potential craft. But look, that's what's out there. That's the story, right? It's SJ is saying here, Taliban is finally kicking ass. Yeah,
that's right.
The Taliban encountering almost no resistance, but the point
because of rifle chuckers.
Yeah, rifle chuckers. Oh, here, how far can you chuck yours? Oh, I can hit them in the head. No, it's just, I don't want the rifle anymore. It burns my head.
They're coming over the hill, quick shoot, and you turn around, they're all gone, they've all thrown their rifle on the ground. Yeah. I'm by myself. So the money has been made. So what's going to happen? So this is going to go on now. This is like a cycle here. So the Taliban are going to take over, and girls will not be allowed to do anything.
Well, to do anything really. I mean, they're still allowed to have religious education, but school, like the boys, that's out, right? And they're gonna be married off to the to the holy fighters, etc., etc. But the funny thing is this: these guys are the same mujahideen that were fighting the Russians with the help of the Americans back in the 80s. You don't have to watch Rambo, but watch the first. Sorry,
they're completely. Remember that. Remember they were flown to the US on fabricated passports to show them how to protect, to train them up, protect
even
oil
Osama bin
pipelines.
Laden, even bin Laden was meant to have been an asset because the bin Ladens have been in bed with the Bushes, for years.
Forever. Yeah, that's right.
So anyway, but that's neither here nor there.
It's funny we can talk about this, but we can't talk about any medicine, right?
I know. It's what you're gonna do. But the ultimate thing to take away from all of this is that somebody is making a lot of money always. Always. No matter what the catastrophe or the crisis or the disaster, someone is making a lot of cash. And yes, SJ, Cheney, Bush, crime families, 100% going right back to the Harriman brothers out of New York that were the Nazi bankers. And George Prescott Bush was working for the Harriman brothers out of New York. That's how the Bush family made their initial fortune by financing the Nazis through the Harriman brothers, for the Harriman brothers, really.
I just want. I know we've only got 4 minutes, right? I just want to quickly say something, and that's with all of these, all the lockdowns and all the military on the streets and having to have permits to do everything, or government permits, where they can say no if they want it, I suppose, because they're the ones who permit the activity. We're still a couple of rules from tyranny. I wanted to say those words over in the show, because it doesn't take many rule changes from a perfectly working democracy into tyranny. Like, it's not much. It really isn't. And so I think we're still a couple of rules away. And I wanted to, despite all these lockdowns, actually the people in New South Wales are actually having a reasonable time. But we don't kind of like it. We got used to it the first time. But every time we get used to it, imposing it another time, at another time, for another reason, is just so much easier. And you think of every interaction, Mecci, between us and the government, every time they do something and we didn't put up any fight whatsoever, they barely resisted. Right? We're happy little Vegemites now, right? We're all patting ourselves on the head going, oh, I feel good. I'm safe. We begged for it. And now, Mecci, the last point I had was about the vaccine. So, because the only way out, our state government is telling us, is by all becoming vaccinated. All the vaccines they couldn't give away, people are now turning in droves to have the vaccine, the one that they didn't want, the one that they were hesitant about. Now, there isn't another choice anymore. There isn't enough of the other one. So the AZ is the one that we couldn't give away, and now people are wanting it. So that's a boon because of the pandemic and all these lockdowns, right? But you're not actually getting, there's no benefit for having the vaccine, like you're not being let out. The same messaging that occurred in the US is not occurring here. Like, oh, you want to be free and not have to wear a mask and, go to venues and do things? Get vaccinated. Not here, not at all. It's just exactly the same lockdown. It is the same lockdown. At some point in the future, they might decide to start that messaging up. But at the moment, because I think it's such a high success rate for proceeding with it, but try to get the vaccine. I called our local place 160 phone calls to get into a queue that eventually said, there isn't any vaccine. I can't place you for 2 weeks, so you'll have to call back. Yeah, good on you.
It's not what you know, it's who you know. Yeah,
that's true. So, look, I've got a lot of family and health issues and things going on, and my life's going to be upside down for a little while, for the next couple of weeks. So I really do appreciate that everyone is looking after themselves, because I'm not going to have any effort. They're not going to have any effort to look after anyone, to give anyone advice or whatever, right? You have to take care of yourselves. I think you're grown up now. That's pretty tough. Wait for the Lambda variant to get here, and if our governments allow that variant to get into our countries, for shame. They should never be allowed to enter politics ever again if they allow that, unless they want it to happen.
There's the music. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about UFO and the rational approach. In fact, I'm going to give you an update on the Skinwalker Ranch, which I find fascinating. If you've watched it, or you haven't watched it, please watch it. Fascinating stuff. And donate!
This is David Mecci signing us out. There's another stream for the second hour. Then a short break. We'll see you soon.